You might not know, but it is crazy how many NBA players almost died for ridiculous reasons that you might have a hard time believing. Now with Steph Curry becoming the face of the NBA making 5 straight finals, things could have been very different for the greatest shooter in NBA history with an accident that was pretty ridiculous and could have changed his life forever. Back in 2018, Curry was driving in his brand new Porsche on the California highway, and he was actually involved in a scary multi-car accident that left his brand new car completely trashed. Afterwards, although it seemed like law enforcement were the heroes, the cops actually took their time in the rain to get pictures with Steph. Warriors coach Steve Kerr actually talked about Curry's status and said, "He was a little shaken up like anybody would be getting into a car accident, but thankfully nobody was hurt and Steph's doing fine. I think he has another car that he can drive." Now after the accident took place, Curry himself really didn't speak much on the crash, but he did tweet about it and said, "Don't need any reminders, but all the time God is great and God is great all the time. Appreciate all the texts." Curry was already dealing with a groin injury at the time that caused him to miss a few games, but the main concern was that everyone involved in the crash was okay, and the cops determined that nobody was involved in foul play including taxing or being impaired. Now Nikola Vucevic is a player who has started making noise playing with Orlando Magic, but interestingly enough, he almost didn't make it to this point for a ridiculous reason you won't believe. Way back in 2006 when Nikola and his father were riding in a train on their way home from basketball camp, the train's braking system actually malfunctioned, causing the train to derail at a high speed and ended up tumbling down a cliff because of this. 47 people died and 200 others were injured, and somehow someway they just walked away with bruises. Nikola actually talked about and broke down what actually happened that day. He said, "There's no conductor and everybody started panicking because they had lost control of the train. They tried to pull the emergency brake. At one point, we knew something was happening. It was like we were going downhill, not just 20, 30 miles an hour, but like 60 or 70, way too fast." Nikola even said that he and his father were in the front car, which was the worst place to be, but luckily, the train hit the side of a tunnel which stopped it from going completely overboard, and it ended up tumbling and rolling down a hill. Nikola even talked about how he felt afterwards, saying, "I don't know how long I was laying there, I was lost. My shoulders were bruised, I had some cuts. First thing I did was look for my dad. I found him, and he started helping other people. I was so relieved." We stopped a few feet from the Morocco River. There was like a 100-foot fall before we'd hit the river. There's no way we would have survived. Now about 90 of the passengers were young children on a school trip to a ski lodge, but many others were teammates and competitors of Nikola who were all coming back from the basketball camp as well. Nikola also said that the accident caused some of his teammates so much trauma, they actually weren't even able to continue playing basketball after that, and Nikola actually broke this down saying, they were affected a lot. Some really good players, they couldn't play at a higher level after that. For a crash like that I was lucky. It's very scary. You don't know if you're going to live or die. It makes you look at life differently, and not take things for granted. It makes you think about a lot of things. You try to appreciate life more. Every time I see a train, I think about it. Now with Karl Anthony Towns having such a great potential in the NBA today, a moment in his life almost changed it forever and nearly ended his career before it even got a chance to start. Back during the beginning of 2019, Towns and his team trainer were on their way to the airport to head to New York for a game against the Knicks, and on the way there, they were hit from the back by a full-sized semi-truck which had Towns suffering from a concussion. But after the crash, Towns had a little conference where he addressed the entire situation and accident, where he said, "We stopped and I looked at our trainer Kurt, who I'm glad is safe as well, and looked at him and complained about the car in front of us stopping so hard. The next thing you know, we got hit." Now despite this taking place, Towns said that he's somewhat thankful that it at least happened the way it did, and to at least be able to talk about the situation today. But Towns talked about this and said, "It's been a blessed 3 days just to be here talking to you all. To able to do what I'm doing is a blessing. I would say I had 5% chance of making it out alive. I hit the 5% mark, and then I'd say 4% was to be seriously injured and 1% was to be minorly injured, and I came out in the 1%. So it's not bad." Towns had little to no injuries, and he said that the doctor told him to take it easy, and his response was, "I just said yeah, great doc, appreciate you, and as soon as I left I called the Wolves and said yo, what's the latest flight I can get out?" Now after the accident, Towns had to miss the first 2 games of his 4-year career, but he talked about this saying, "It could have been much worse. In all honesty, I should not have made it out like I did, but I'm glad I did." Now throughout Chris Bosh's career, he definitely made a name during his time in Toronto, but he especially became legendary in Miami. because he became a key piece of 2 championships in 4 years. But shortly after LeBron left in 2014 to return to Cleveland, Chris began having health issues that sidelined him and forced him out of the league, and even brought him to a near-death experience. In 2018, Chris Bosh actually sat down with Bill Simmons on his podcast to discuss his recent health issues. Bill Simmons began asking, "Is your blood clot issue life-threatening?" and Bosh responded saying, "Yeah, it was life-threatening. At the moment, I didn't know it was life-threatening, and then they were like, yeah, we're going to check you into the hospital." And as I'm being checked into the hospital, I see the Heat just traded for Goran Dragic, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what all this stuff means, but then they started hooking me up to machines, and they start telling me the next 24 hours is crucial. Then I had to call my wife, and she Googles blood clots, and I think it was Jerome Kersey. He had just passed away from the same thing, and so she's freaking out. I'm freaking out, and then when I think I'm going in the hospital, they're like, yeah, no, we've got to do surgery on you. Simmons then asked Bosh what it was like going through all this as a player in his prime years, and Bosh said, "It's been a blessing, really, because I've been able to do other things and see things from another perspective, and yeah, it's kind of whack to be in that position because of that. I felt that we had a great team in 2016. I wanted to compete for a championship. I wanted to get back to the throne, and it would have been classic to play Cleveland that year. That's all that was on my mind, was to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and compete. Once you're there, we felt that we had a chance if we get there, and I had all these factors that I was playing in my head, and it happened exactly the way I thought it would. Playing Toronto, Cleveland's there, and I couldn't do anything about it." Now, over the last few years, Damian Lillard quickly went from one of the most underrated players in the league to being one of the most skillful and respected top-tier players, but interestingly enough, he almost didn't come close to making it to this point. His career stems from where he grew up from a young age in Oakland, California, where he was constantly surrounded by a massive amount of gang violence, and he even lost some people close to him to that. But with that being said, he recently came out saying that his hunger in the NBA to be this good is partially because of that very fact, and more specifically due to a night in 2008 that changed his life forever. The story goes like this: that after a basketball practice, Lillard walked to a bus stop to take the next bus home, and while he was sitting there, 3 masked men walked up to him and demanded that he emptied his pockets. With Damian being the strong-minded person that he is, he didn't back down, and he talked about it saying, "I saw 3 of them, but 2 of them were smaller than me." Lillard fought back, and after a huge 3-on-1, one of them decided that he wasn't going to back down either, and pulled out a weapon and pointed it directly between Damian's eyes, and that forced him to back down. And Damian actually talked about this moment where he said, "That's when I realized that you can be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It ain't always about love just because you're from here." I was really scared. I was in so much shock that I don't think it even processed all the way. All it took was one pull of the trigger, and I was dead on the spot. Damian Lillard actually referred to this life-changing time when he was almost shot in one of his songs, Roll Call. Now, this wasn't the last time that Lillard dealt with something like this. Some people actually plotted on his very own brother. One day, 2 people waited for him outside of a mall in Oregon, where they actually attempted to take his life, but Damian's brother survived the attack even though many shots were fired. If you've enjoyed the video, subscribe for more great content on the NBA, and leave your thoughts in the comments section below.